On October 7, 2023, Hamas launched 5,000 rockets on Israel in a single day. This large-scale attack is the deadliest attack on Israel in last 50 years.
After Hamas launched a major surprise rocket attack earlier today. According to the Israeli Defense Force, more than 5,000 rockets have been launched from Gaza into Israel.
Thousands of rockets have been launched into Israel from Gaza.
Iron Dome, which is the Israelis' all-weather air defense system, stopped many rockets, yet more than 1,500 people have already died in this attack, and many were taken hostages. In response to this, Israel declared a state of war for the first time since 1973.
Israel has formally declared war after that unprecedented multi-pronged terror attack from Hamas.
The surprise attack stunned Israel and the world, setting off swift condemnation from Western leaders.
אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו במלחמה. לא במבצע, לא בסבבים, במלחמה. האויב ישלם מחיר שהוא לא ידע מותו. אנחנו במלחמה ואנחנו ננצח בה.
The Israel-Palestine conflict is one of the world's longest running and most crucial geopolitical conflict because the economy of every nation, including that of India, Europe, Middle East and United States, is actually affected whenever this conflict escalates. And we might not be aware of this, but this struggle between Israel and Palestine has contributed to some of the most significant events in India's history, such as emergency of 1975. And just like Russia-Ukraine war situation, again the world has divided into two ideologies, and this war has the potential to disrupt the global economies because it involves some of the world's most powerful nations, including Saudi Arabia, Iran, United States and European nations. And the more this war will escalate, the greater negative impact it will have on the global trade. So, in this episode, we will try to understand 1. What exactly is the Israel-Palestine conflict? 2. Why is this conflict so critical for the world economy? 3. How can it impact on India, Middle East, Europe corridor? And most importantly, what will be the impact of Israel-Palestine war on Indian economy? The origin of Israel and Palestine conflict can be tracked back to the late of 19th century. At that time, Israel did not exist as a nation. No, Judaism emerged from Middle East country, but Jewish community did not have any specific country for themselves. So they were scattered all around the world. So Judaism and Islam has emerged in the Middle East. They have shared the same place for the hundreds of years under Ottoman Empire, and there was no war between them during the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Turkish Empire ruled a large portion of Middle East from 1516 to 1917, including the land along the East Mediterranean. So, what changed in late 19th and early 20th century? The Ottoman Empire fell after the World War I in 1918. When Ottoman Empire fell, this region became a British mandate, and British took the control over the Palestine and the Jordan region. And while other Middle Eastern countries gradually gained their independence, but Palestine remained ruled by the British. In 1917, during the First World War, Britain announced the Balfour Declaration, which is the turning point in history of Israel-Palestine conflict. The Balfour Declaration of 1917 assured the Jewish community for creation of Jewish state in the Palestine. So, after the Britain gained the control over the Palestine, the Jewish people who were being discriminated against, persecuted and harassed in Europe migrated to the Palestine under the British rule from 1920 to 1947. The British rule allowed the Jewish to come in, migrate in Palestine, settle in Palestine and purchase the land in Palestine in spite of all the Arab resistance and opposition to it. And this is where the tension between both countries started rising. But soon enough, the World War II started in 1939 and lasted till 1945. So during that time, to escape Nazi-dominated Europe during Second World War, again Jewish people migrated to the British Palestine, and according to the British data, more than 370,000 Jewish migrants arrived in Palestine between 1920 to 1947, and most of them being from the Europe. which further increased the conflict between Arabs and the Jews. And in 1947, when Britain could not control the escalated violence in that region, Britain requested the United Nations, and United Nations decided to form a special committee on Palestine so that both countries, Arab and Israelis, have their own nation. This committee went to Palestine, talked to people, made some investigations, and they come up with a partition plan and said there will going to be two states in Palestine, and there will going to be a Jewish state and Palestine state. But for those who are not aware about this region, there is a site called Jerusalem, which is a holy site for three reasons. Because that belongs to Muslims, Jews, and the Christians. So for that region, United Nations suggested dividing that territory into the three parts: the Arab region, the Jewish region, and the city for the Jerusalem kept under the United Nations as an international city. And this is how Israel was formed as a nation on 14th May 1948. But while Jewish community were happy with this decision and whatever they got, Arab countries were not happy at all about it. So on the same day, 5 Arab countries, Egypt, Iraq, Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria attacked Israel. But guess what? Where Israel was fighting for the existence of a new state against all these poor coordinated Arab countries, Israel won the war. And after that, the geographical boundaries of Israel changed as it captured the eastern part of Gaza Strip, which is previously under the Egypt control, and west part of the Jerusalem. And Jordan occupied eastern part of the West Bank. And where initially Jerusalem was the part of the Palestine, now Jerusalem was divided between Israeli force in the west and Jordanian force in the east. And because there was no peace agreement between them, there were more wars. And in last 75 years, Israel and Arabs fought 6 wars and 2 uprisings. These 6 wars are 1948 to 49 Israel War of Independence and Palestinians, 1956 Suez Crisis, 1967 Six-Day War, 1973 War, and then 1982 Lebanon War and the Second Lebanon War in 2006. And 2 uprisings, one was from 1987 to 1993 and second was from 2000 to 2005. And this Israel-Palestine war is still going on. But it's not that Israel and Palestinians have never made effort to end these disputes. Israel and Palestinians held peace talks between the 1990s to 2010s. But the talks were regularly disrupted by rising level of violence. A negotiated peace did seem possible in the early days. A series of secret talks in Norway became a Oslo peace process in 1993.
That the security of the Israeli people will be reconciled with the hopes of the Palestinian people. This brave gamble that the future can be better than the past must endure.
And it was the historic moment when Palestinians for the first time recognized the state of Israel and Israel recognized its historic enemy. But sadly, it did not last long. Israeli opposition leader Benjamin Netanyahu has referred to Oslo as an existential threat to Israel. So Israelis accelerated their project to settle Jewish in the occupied Palestinian territories. And recently formed Palestinian militant group Hamas sent suicide bomber to Israel to kill civilians and to ruin the possibility of peaceful deal between Israel and Palestinians. As a result, its atmosphere in Israel turned ugly. And on November 4, 1995, a Jewish extremist assassinated Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin. Again in 2000s, attempts were made to revive peace process, including in 2003 when a roadmap was devised by world powers with the ultimate goal of two-state solution. But this was never implemented. Finally, peace efforts remained stagnant in 2014 after the unsuccessful Israeli-Palestinian negotiation in Washington. Now the question is, as it is very clear what was the history of conflict between Israel and Palestinians. Now the question is, why are Israel and Gaza are at war now, or why they are fighting now? The Israel-Gaza conflict started when Islamist political group Hamas won the election in Gaza Strip in year 2005 and 6, and it later emerged when Palestinian Authority government split into Fatah government into the West Bank and the Hamas government in the Gaza Strip after Fatah government was violently ousted after losing election to Hamas. Since then, militant in Gaza has fought several wars with Israel, which along with Egypt has maintained partial restriction on Gaza Strip to isolate Hamas and try to stop attacks, particularly to discriminate firing of rockets into the Israel cities. Palestinians in Gaza say Israelis' restrictions and its air strike on heavy populated area amount to a collective punishment. The Israel versus Palestinian war in 2023 has deadliest after Palestinians' attack on Israel, Israel air strikes on Gaza, and joint Egypt-Israeli bombardment on Gaza.
This year has been the deadliest year on the record of Palestine. It is occupied West Bank and the East Jerusalem. They also complained of restrictions of military actions being carried out in the response of deadly attack on Israel. The tension could have one of the reason of Hamas' latest attack. So, as we have understood the conflict between Israel and Hamas, now let us understand the impact of this war on geopolitics and the world economy. Today's world economy looks vulnerable. The world is still recovering from the inflation that was made even worse by the Russia invasion of Ukraine last year. Another war in an energy-produced region could trigger inflation again. Further, both consequences could extend from renewed unrest in the Arab world. Conflict in the Middle East can send the tremors through the world because the region is crucial supplier of the energy and the key shipping of pass away. The most obvious example is 1973 Arab-Israel War, which resulted in the oil embargo and the years of stagflation in the industrial economies. And there could be the three potential effects depending on how the war develops over the coming weeks or months. This could be understood in three scenarios. Scenario 1. Gaza conflict. Minimal impact of global economy. In 2014, the kidnap and murder of 3 Israel triggered a Gaza ground invasion, resulting in 2,000 deaths. The conflict is still located. The impact on global oil prices and economy was limited. Today, that toll is already higher, but we might see a similar situation. The US tightening sanctions on Iran's oils could be a factor. If these Iranian barrels vanish due to the US pressure, oil prices could rise by $3 to $4, but the global impact would be minimal. Saudi Arab and the UAE can compensate with their spare capacity. Further, if we discuss the scenario 2, what if the conflict spread? Hezbollah and Iran, blocked and political and militia group in Lebanon, has already the exchange fire with the Israeli forces, hitting an Israel army post with the guided missiles. If these conflicts expand to Lebanon and Syria, effectively turning into the proxy war between Iran and Israel, it will come at an increased economic cost. This escalation increased the likelihood of a direct Israel-Iran conflict, pushing oil prices higher. In 2006 Israel-Hezbollah war, crude oil price rose by $5 per barrel. A similar move today would be sand price by 10%, reaching around $95. In scenario 3, we will discuss Iran-Israel conflict. While the chance of the direct conflict between Iran and Israel is low, it's precious such a clash trigger a global reason. Soaring oil prices and falling investment would harm economic growth and push up inflation. Now, one in a region, not even Iran, want to see a Hamas-Israel conflict escalate into a full-scale regional war, says Hassan Allah. But with the emotion running high, the risk of miscalculation is significant. Israel and US have given a conflicting statement about the Iran's involvement in a Hamas attack, while the Israel's Strategic Affairs Minister Ron Dermer suggests some of the evidence of Iran knowledge. US officials claim Iran leaders were surprised. However, the Iran's funding and aiming to Hamas make it complicit in broader sense. Israel has long considered Iran's nuclear ambitions a severe threat. Recent development like Iran forming an alliance with improving the relation with Russia, Saudi Arab and the US have increased tension. The consequences of this war are not limited to the surrounding countries only. The GTRI said the conflict could drill the prospect of the historic peace deal between the Israel and Saudi Arab. And if this happened, in an Israel-Iran conflict, Iran would likely mobilize its network to the proxy Syria, Iraq, Yemen and Bahrain. Bloomberg economists predict a 1% drop in a global growth, bring 2024 estimate down to 1.7%, This could also be the worst growth since 1982, when the Fed raised interest rate of the combat is the 1970s oil stock. And these factors together would lead 0.3 percent point drag on global growth next year, equivalent to about $3,000 billion lost output, causing a slowdown to 2.4%. This would be the weakest growth of 3 decades, apart from 2020 COVID crisis and the global recession in 2009. In all these cases, the direction is same: more expensive oil, higher inflation, and slower growth. But the magnitude is different. The wilder the conflict spread, the more its impact becomes global rather than regional. In all these cases, the direction is same: more expensive oil, higher inflation, and slower growth. But the magnitude is different. The wider the conflict spread, its more impact becomes global rather than regional. Additionally, higher oil prices could contribute about 0.2 percent points to the global inflation, keeping it near 6%. This would maintain pressure to the central bankers to maintain tight monetary policies, even economic growth disappoints. This war between the Israel and Hamas poses a whole new series to risk to an already fragile global economy, and economists are warning it could be take some time for the fallout to be clear. We don't know whether the Israel and Palestine war will end, because there is no end. The only question is, there are economists branching up to the impact crude oil prices have going to up 4% within a week. Analysts are expecting economic shocks. The ongoing war has the uncertainty over the Middle East geopolitical stability and important. And this war will also have an impact on the Indian economy, because the India is the Israel's second largest trading partner in Asia and the seventh largest globally. India-Israel bilateral trade has doubled in $10.77 billion in FY23 and $5.65 billion to the pre-pandemic period of 2021 and 22. According to the think tank Global Trade Research Initiative, the Israel-Hamas war may have led higher insurance premium and shipping costs from Indian exports. The ongoing Israel-Hamas conflict may lead to delay and complication in the Indian Middle East Europe Economic Corridor project, which was signed during the G20 summit in New Delhi last month. The inversion corridor would span from India to Europe, passing through the UAE, Saudi Arab, Jordan, Israel and Greece. The project Ki Global is enhanced transportation and communication link between the Europe and Asia. If this war doesn't stop soon, this economic corridor would get cancelled. Thank you for watching this video.